Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. You're strong, aren't you? I heard that question in my head the moment I saw her step through the doorway at my friend's house. I had asked her to come. Hell, I'd spent too long choosing my shirt, washing the car, making sure my playlist was set up to match the vibe I wanted. I was like a kid prepping for a big game, heart pounding, sweaty palms, that hum of adrenaline right beneath the surface. And then Lauren walked in. There she was, dressed in a sleek black dress, a halter around her neck that left her shoulders bare and gleaming in the subdued living room light. She had this way of moving, hips swaying, eyes scanning the crowd as if she expected someone else. Or maybe she was just letting me know, without a word, that she wasn't really mine. Not that night. Maybe not ever. You're strong, right? That voice rolled over and over in my brain, and for the first few minutes, I believed it. I tried to play the part of the confident host, or at least the confident guy who'd brought a beautiful woman to the party. I made some jokes, poured her a glass of wine, introduced her around. My buddies teased me a bit, like, "Man, Mike, you're pulling out the stops tonight, huh?" And I tried to grin it away. But something felt off from the start. Maybe it was the fact that Lauren didn't even try to hold my hand, or that she laughed just a little too hard at some other man's joke in the kitchen. The man in the kitchen was tall, fit, tanned in a way that suggested he spent more time outdoors than in, and had that easy confidence that always made me feel slightly out of place. That was Ricardo, her friend, or so she told me. I'd met him once before, at a fitness expo downtown, where Lauren insisted we go try yoga classes. She introduced him as a trainer she knew from a workshop. I remembered how casually his hand lingered on her back. Still, I tried to keep my composure. I kept telling myself, she came here with you. She's yours to win. So I played the perfect host, or I tried to. Enjoy the music, the wine. We've got some great cocktails in the back. People spread out through the house, couples dancing near the speakers, a warm glow from the lamps, the hush of conversation, the fizz of champagne in slender glasses. I had everything set up. I wanted it to be a night to remember. And it was, though not in the way I'd hoped. She danced near me, but never with me. I remember vividly how she let her hair fall across her shoulder, then brushed it away, how she closed her eyes to the rhythm. Yet never once did she tilt that chin toward me, never once invite me closer. And an hour later, I realized she was gone. Slipped out. No goodbye. Nothing. The last memory I had of her that night was her standing by the window with a half smile, locked in some private conversation with Ricardo. I was too busy being a good host, making sure people had enough to drink, checking the music, nodding to old friends who gave me encouraging winks like, "Mike, you lucky dog." Meanwhile, she vanished. She left with him, or someone else, but I knew in my gut it was him. I heard a snippet from the living room. "Hey, does anyone know who she left with?" "No idea," another voice said. "Some guy in a leather jacket." And I was in the upstairs bathroom, leaning over the sink, looking at my reflection, trying to decide if I was about to punch the mirror or just slump down and let out a laugh at my own stupidity. I mean, how could I not have seen it? The black dress might as well have been a funeral dress for my ego. I left the party soon after. My friends asked if I was feeling okay. I muttered something about a headache, told them to lock up, and walked out. Climbed into my car, a freshly washed sedan that now felt like a cheap prop, and drove home in a haze. I sat in my driveway with the engine off, staring through the windshield. The windows of my house were dark except for a porch light. Silence all around. In that quiet, the question came again. "You're strong, right? You're not going to break over this, are you?" I didn't break, not out loud. I just let the silence envelop me, my heart throbbing as if to remind me of every second that had just passed. Inside, I replaced the typical welcome sign by the door with a fresh piece of wood. Thinking with a weird sense of resolution. but I hadn't carved anything into it yet. That would come soon. The night was long, sleepless. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren's silhouette against the party lights, the swirl of that black dress around her thighs, the flicker in her eyes that never found their way to me. I cursed under my breath. That was the only sound I let myself make. I refused to scream or cry. I just kept telling myself, wait, and see. In the morning, I got a voice note. It was her voice, husky, satisfied, like someone who'd had a night of intense, breathless excitement. "Last night was magic," she said, a small laugh at the end. That was all. No apology, no explanation, no question about how I was doing. Just that. Magic. And I realized with a physical jolt in my gut how thoroughly I was being used. The rage that welled up was scorching, but I kept it iced over. I just stood there in my living room, phone in hand, repeating that final word. Magic. I didn't respond, didn't text back or call. I had some calls to make, yes, but not to her. At least not yet. Instead, I went outside, took down the welcome sign I'd had all these years, a gift from my mother, ironically enough, and replaced it with something I carved at dawn. "Come in if you know how to be faithful." It felt silly when I looked at it for the first time. A chunk of wood with my scratchy letters. But it also felt correct. It was a message, not just to her, but to the whole world that might come knocking. No more open door for anyone who'd walk in and shred my dignity. I was done being that guy who tried so hard to please, the puppy dog wagging his tail, hoping to be patted. She'd changed me in a single night, or maybe the change was building for months. She arrived 2 days later. She decided to come back, stepping up to my porch with that confident stride of hers, like the black dress was still swirling around her, making her unstoppable. This time, she wore a cream-colored blouse and tight jeans, looking all casual and sweet, as if I might forget her performance at the party. She stared at the sign. A ripple of amusement crossed her face, followed by a pout that was maybe half real. She looked at me through the living room window, motioned for me to open the door. I let her in, but I said nothing, just pointed at the sign. "What's that about?" she asked. I stood there, arms folded, shoulders tight. "Read it," I said, my voice level. She read it again. "Come in if you know how to be faithful," and gave a soft scoff. Funny. Are you trying to accuse me of something? I didn't answer. Just let the silence coat the room. She glanced around, fidgeted with a strand of hair. The tension was thick as tar. I could see she was about to either explode in anger or try to spin things in her favor. She exhaled, trying to keep her composure, forced a little smile. "Mike," she began, but I shut her down with a raised hand. No, I wasn't in the mood for the usual explanations. I wasn't going to be that gullible man. Nodding dumbly, she walked closer, pressed a hand to my chest, giving me that look that once would have dissolved all my reservations. "Look," she said, "I know what you think you saw, but—" I shook my head. Still silent, she tried to caress my shoulder, but I stepped back. My reflexes felt razor-sharp, like a wounded animal that wouldn't let anyone near. I turned and reached for the door behind her. An old wooden door that squeaked on its hinges, gave it a push so it swung shut. The latch clicked like a verdict. She turned around, realized she was basically trapped in the front foyer with me. Something flickered in her eyes. "What the hell, Mike?" she whispered, more uneasy now. I kept my voice calm. "I'd like you to leave." She blinked. "You let me in just so. I wanted you to see it," I said, nodding at the sign. "Wanted you to feel how things have changed. Now you can go." I opened the door again. She took a moment, tried to say something, but I closed my eyes, ignoring her presence, and after a few seconds, I heard her footsteps stepping back onto the porch. The door's frame rattled as I slammed it shut. It was such a final sound. And I swear, the second that door shut behind her, I felt a slice of my life shutting down with it. Maybe it was the last naive part of me that believed in us. I stood there, breathing heavily, letting the adrenaline swirl through me. Through the window, I glimpsed her walking away, glancing over her shoulder, trying to read me. But I stared until she vanished past the hedge. I never made a public fuss. Didn't rant on social media or burn her pictures. I let her think that was the end, that maybe I was just going to vanish quietly from her life. She might have assumed I would brood for a while and move on. But something darker had taken hold in me, something that wanted her to feel what I felt. Emptiness, isolation, the sense that every door was closed. So I started making calls. First call, a friend who ran the local yoga studio, the one Lauren had always gone to. We were on good terms, had done each other favors. I asked him politely to remove her name from the membership list, citing personal reasons. He owed me enough to not ask too many questions. Sure, he said. Consider it done. Second call. A contact at a philanthropic committee that invited donors and volunteers to fancy banquets. She liked going there, loved the prestige. I told them I had reason to believe she had exploited their donation system, or something equally plausible. Without even verifying, they cut her from the next event's roster. People trust me. I've built a reputation for reliability. Now I use that trust to tighten her social circle until it strangled. Old connections froze. New circles quietly shut their doors. I didn't do anything overtly illegal, just enough rumor, enough subtle suggestion. People withdrew invites, canceled dinners. It was a small circle in our city of well-to-do social gatherings. Everyone listened, if the right person whispered. She found out soon enough. At first, she texted me, asking for a conversation. Then came the missed calls, the voice messages. Mike, what's going on? Why is everyone acting so strange? Call me back. We need to talk. The more she reached out, the less I responded. Days passed. My phone would ping, and I'd see another message. This is insane. Pick up. Or, explain what you're doing. But I just listened to the recordings at night, in the dark, letting them feed the cold satisfaction that had replaced my heartbreak. I was proud of my scheme. Operation Space, I privately called it, because I was giving her enough rope, enough space, to realize she was alone, deserted. I was pushing her out of every social sphere she valued. She had always been the life of the party, the social butterfly with a bright smile, a woman who needed admiration like oxygen. Now I was cutting off her oxygen supply. But at the same time, that question kept flickering at the back of my mind. You're strong, right? So why do you feel so hollow? Why do you wake up with a tightness in your chest that no morning jog can release? One afternoon, when the sun was blazing white and the heat shimmered on the pavement, I got a text from a mutual acquaintance who said he'd spotted Lauren with someone, a man who looked suspiciously like Ricardo, arguing in the parking lot of a downtown restaurant. She was raising her voice, gesturing angrily, and he stood there with arms crossed, a slight smirk. It stung me to imagine them together. My eyes narrowed on the phone screen, jealousy twisting my gut. If I'm being honest, a part of me wanted to see them fail, to watch him reject her, so she'd taste that bitter bite. Another part of me wanted to track them down and tear that smirk off his face. But I did neither. I stayed at home, preparing more calls, more subtle strikes. The day I found out she'd been barred from another high society fundraiser, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and saluted my reflection in the window. Then I got her final text. Please, just talk to me. I can fix this. I whispered to my phone, no, you can't, and turned it face down. I told myself she deserved it, and in many ways she did. But that night, I found myself recalling every detail of our relationship, from how we first bonded over a random conversation at a coffee shop in downtown Austin, to the electric moments that once made my heart pound with excitement. I thought about how she used to ask me, "What makes you happy, Mike? What do you really want?" And how I never had a real answer because I was too busy trying to keep her interested. And then I remembered that night. The black dress. The way her voice sounded in my ear, raspy with satisfaction. When she said, "Last night was magic," my blood boiled all over again. Magic with him. She was dancing near me, but her mind was on him. I saw her flirt right under my nose, then vanish. The memory of her subtle laughter, the tilt of her head toward his whispers, was a brand on my pride. That same monstrous pride was fueling me now, driving me forward to sabotage everything she held dear. About a week later, I got a text from her. "I'm sorry. I messed up. Let me make it right." It was a small break in her usual arrogance, but I ignored it, determined to see how far she'd crumble. Yet the next day, she showed up at my door again. Unlike before, she wasn't dressed to impress. She wore plain clothes, no makeup, hair slightly disheveled. She looked tired. There were circles under her eyes, the corners of her mouth pulled down in defeat. She knocked softly, and because a part of me wanted to see her face, I opened. She stood on the porch, stared at the wooden sign, then looked me in the eyes. "I know what you're doing," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't even get into my yoga studio. The people from the charity events won't return my calls. My friend from the brand agency just told me the entire city's blacklisting me on your word." I didn't confirm or deny. I just let her see in my eyes that it was all true. "You want to ruin me?" she asked. "You want me to beg?" I said nothing, my jaw locked tight. I remembered her words from the voice note. Magic. They rose in my throat like bile. A tremble crossed her lips. "Fine," she said. "Explain. Talk to me. Yell at me if you want, but don't shut me out like this." That's when I snapped. My voice came out low and bitter. "Yell at you? You think that's all you deserve?" She looked away. Then, quietly, "Mike, we can still fix this." "Fix what?" I hissed. "The fact you walked out of that party and gave yourself to him. The fact you then had the nerve to call it magic in my face, or that you come here now and act like it's all just a misunderstanding." She didn't answer right away. Her shoulders shook. A tear trickled down her cheek. For a split second, I hesitated. The old reflex to comfort her flared up, but I shoved it down, remembering every pang of jealousy, every hollow night, remembering how she took my trust and used it as a doormat. "You want me to tell you the truth," she said softly. I glared. "Oh, now you have a truth." Her hands trembled. "Ricardo. I've known him for a while, but it wasn't supposed to happen the way it did. That night at the party, I had too much to drink, and everything just felt electric. I was angry at you for ignoring me, for focusing on your friends instead of me, and..." A harsh laugh escaped my throat. "So it's my fault you couldn't keep your clothes on in front of him." She flinched. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I realized that. I was lost in the moment. I snapped. "Stop. Spare me the details. I've already got enough images burned into my skull." For a long moment, we stood in silence. I felt tension coil in my muscles, and I wanted so badly to hurl more insults at her, to push her away. But another part of me wanted to drag her inside, pin her to the wall, demand every explanation I'd been replaying in my nightmares. The man in me craved the truth, even if it crushed me all over again. But the battered lover in me wanted to cause her as much pain as I'd felt. I let that battered lover speak. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "Is it because you regret what you did, or because you can't stand that I froze you out of everything?" She swallowed, her gaze dropping to the ground. "A little of both," she admitted. I felt my stomach twist. At least she wasn't lying about that. My chest felt tight with anger. For a moment, we just breathed the same air, an arm's length apart. Then I pressed my foot against the door, pushing it wide open. "You want inside?" She blinked, uncertain. "Yes," she managed, stepping forward. But the moment she crossed the threshold, I moved to the sign that said, "Come in if you know how to be faithful." I traced my fingertip over those letters, letting her see me do it. She paused. "That's not fair," she whispered. "Life's not fair," I murmured, locking the door behind us. "Now talk." So she talked. Or rather, she poured out a series of half-explanations, excuses, regrets. My mind latched onto every detail that hinted at how the betrayal happened. She described the moment she walked away from me at the party, how Ricardo cornered her in the hallway near the guest bedroom, how her head was spinning from wine and the music, and the tension she felt in our relationship. He whispered something about wanting her, how he'd been wanting her for so long, how she deserved more attention than I ever gave her. The words tumbled out of her, in a rush. And as she spoke, an ugly reel played in my imagination. Him sliding his hand up her thigh, her not resisting, that black dress riding higher. She said it was a mistake, a drunken slip. She insisted she tried to stop it when it started going too far, but she was dizzy, angry, and filled with all those swirling emotions. One thing led to another, classic line. And he ended up driving her back to his place. She swore they only spent a short, heated window of time together. Then she felt ashamed and left. That's when she sent me the voice note, half laughing, half trying to salvage her pride, wanting me to believe she'd had some magical adventure. I suppose it was a twisted attempt to make me jealous or to punish me for not being who she wanted me to be. Hearing those details made me want to punch a hole through the wall. Instead, I gripped the edge of the kitchen table so hard I felt my knuckles whiten. "So you enjoyed it?" I ground out. "That's what you said in the voice note, right?" It was magical. Her eyes filled with tears. I was drunk and stupid. And yes, for a few minutes it felt. I don't know. I was angry at you, and he made me feel desired. "I'm sorry." I stared at her, my heart a sledgehammer in my chest. A swirl of conflicting emotions raced through me. Hatred, heartbreak, the faint memory of how I once loved her so deeply. My throat felt dry. "Get out." She lifted her head, startled. "What?" I said, "Get out." I repeated, stepping aside so she could pass through the front door. "I don't need this. I don't want your details, your regrets. Not anymore." She pleaded, voice raw now. "Mike, please, don't push me away. We can fix this. I'll do anything." There it was, that break in her arrogance I'd wanted to see. Instead of feeling triumph, though, I felt a pit in my stomach. Because seeing her like this, desperate, undone, twisted the knife deeper inside me. The same voice that had been asking, "Are you strong?" now asked, "Are you this cruel?" I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "I can't stand the sight of you right now, or the smell of him that might still be clinging to your skin." "You got it." A tremor ran through her. She nodded, tears flooding her eyes. "I get it," she whispered. "I'll go." She turned on her heel and walked out. I watched her go, the door open behind her, letting a flood of sunlight spill across the threshold. Then I heard her footsteps fade, and I shut it again. This time, it felt like the door was closing on every last flicker of hope that might have remained in my chest. I hated her. I needed her. I was undone by her. And I wanted to watch her burn for what she'd done. That tension was agony. So I let the revenge keep going. From that day on, I doubled down. If she tried to apologize, I blocked her number. I told mutual friends that she needed space to figure her issues out. I quietly spread the rumor that she was in a self-destructive spiral. People who might have offered her a second chance withdrew. She texted me from different numbers. "I'm losing everything, Mike." I read them in the quiet of my home and felt a surge of dark satisfaction, laced with heartbreak. "You're strong, right?" But my nights were hell. Sleep rarely came. I'd lie in bed, stare at the ceiling, and see visions of them together. I'd see that black dress crumpled on some stranger's floor. My jaw would clench until it hurt. Sometimes, to distract myself, I'd think about how I was systematically shutting her out of the city's social network. But that always left me with the taste of ashes in my mouth. Because for all her betrayals, she'd once been the woman I thought I'd marry. The woman I believed was worth my time, my heart. Days turned into weeks, and the messages from her slowed, then stopped. My friend from the yoga studio texted me that he hadn't seen her around. My contact at the philanthropic committee said she'd given up trying to get invited again. She was vanishing, bit by bit, from the places she used to shine. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like I was draining my own blood in the process. Because the more I iced her out, the more I realized I was just fueling my own bitterness. That bitterness was a lonely, hollow place. Still, the final blow came when she tried one last desperate attempt. She arrived at my door, face pale, eyes rimmed red. She had a phone in hand and said quietly, "I just want to know if this is the end." I let her inside without a word. My expression must have been carved from stone. We stood in the foyer, that damn sign behind us, and she pressed me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You can't just erase me like this. After all we've been." I cut her off. "We've been nothing for a while now, Lauren." She stared, stunned. "You don't mean that." I stepped forward, gaze drilling into hers. "I told you I can't bear your presence, your smell, your lies. And you're still here, crying for what? Another chance at hurting me." She sobbed, tried to reach for my hand. I pulled back. "You can't hate me forever, Mike." I laughed, but the sound came out strangled. "Watch me." I spat. She stood there, tears glistening. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A single text from an unknown contact popped up. I glimpsed the name, Ricardo. A jolt of fury coursed through me. "He still calls you?" I demanded, voice raw with jealousy and disgust. She lifted her phone with trembling fingers. I told him to stay away, that it was over, that I was trying to fix things here, but he doesn't listen. "Then break the phone," I muttered coldly. "Smash it. Show me you're done with him." Her eyes went wide. She hesitated, then raised the device and let it slip from her fingers. It hit the floor with a sharp crack. The screen flickered. She stomped on it with the heel of her shoe, splintering the glass. Then she looked up at me, tears brimming. "Is that enough?" I stared at the broken phone, at the scattering of digital shards on my hardwood floor. Part of me wanted to bend down, scoop it up, see if it was truly dead. Another part recognized that I was doing exactly what I had condemned in her, trying to break something that once meant the world. I felt a wave of disgust with myself, but I also felt a savage sense of triumph. She'd just destroyed a piece of her life for me. I turned away. "Get out," I said softly. She made a choked sound. "But, get out," I repeated, more forcefully. "This time, stay out." She moved behind me, reaching for my shoulder. "Please." I spun around, face twisted with months of pent-up anger. I roared, "Go." She flinched and scrambled for the door, fumbling with the knob. The door opened, letting in a painful burst of sunlight that seemed to illuminate everything in my house. She ran out, tears streaking her face, and I sank to my knees, hands shaking. The rage I unleashed was a wave that left me drained, trembling. The house was quiet again, except for my ragged breathing. I stared at the shards of her phone on the floor, and a single strangled laugh crawled up my throat. I had wanted this, hadn't I? The question pounded in my head all that night. "You're strong, right? Then why do you feel so broken?" I tried to bury it. I forced myself to focus on the daily tasks of life. Calls, finances, grocery runs. But every chore was haunted by her face, her voice, her pleading eyes. And that unstoppable reel. The black dress, the hall at my friend's house, the echo of her laugh as she pressed up against Ricardo. She'd robbed me of peace, and so I robbed her of her social standing. Fair trade, I told myself. But it felt less like victory and more like self-mutilation. One last spark came about 2 weeks later, a text from an unknown number. I recognized her writing instantly. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Tell me if there's any chance for forgiveness. Please. I will do anything. I exhaled, pressed my thumb against the phone screen, typed 2 words. Goodbye. Forever. Then I paused, the cursor blinking. I imagined her, trembling with her phone in her hands, possibly hoping for a miracle. My mind flashed to the moments we shared. The good, the laughter, the closeness, the promise of building a life together. Another wave of fury enveloped me, overshadowed by the memory of her betrayal. I pressed send. The finality hit me like a punch in the gut. I dropped the phone on the table and let out a breath that I felt I'd been holding for months. I had done it. The end. But even as that wave of triumph washed over me, a hollowness remained. I realized I'd built a prison for her, but the bars now surrounded me. This unstoppable, seething rage had guided me, but it never let me walk free. I stumbled to the kitchen, poured myself a heavy shot of whiskey, and downed it. The liquor burned my throat, hot enough to make me grit my teeth. Then I stared out the window, the sun sliding beneath the horizon. Birds roosted in the live oaks, the sky turned purple, and I wondered, if I was so strong, why did it feel like there was a man lying in pieces at my feet? Myself. I tried to calm my thoughts. A swirl of images assaulted me. Her smile when I first asked her out, the swirl of her hair in the breeze, her moans of laughter at my jokes, the black dress that devoured the room. And then that final text. We used to be partners, laughing over shared dinners, discussing weekend plans. Now we were ghosts in each other's lives. I closed my eyes, pressing my palm hard against the window glass. It felt cool. My chest heaved with the effort of containing the storm inside. Then I inhaled, trying to regain composure. There was no going back. I had drawn the line in fire. In the days that followed, I half expected to see her show up again, but she didn't. I half expected to get a phone call from someone telling me she'd left town or done something drastic. That never came either. Instead, a hush settled over my life. People noticed my withdrawal, but I told them everything was fine. A few friends asked me about the black dress, the rumors, and I just shrugged. No one pried too deeply. In this society, people prefer to let skeletons rot behind closed doors. I spent my afternoons working. Nights sometimes found me prowling the city streets in my car, passing the places we once went. I found myself outside that yoga studio where I'd gotten her membership canceled. No sign of her. I drove by the Philanthropic Committee's building with its tall white columns. The doorman recognized me and nodded. I almost wanted to say, "Did you see her? Is she all right?" But I kept my window closed and drove on. One evening, as I was wandering aimlessly, I spotted a tall figure leaning against a lamppost near a neon-lit bar. He wore a leather jacket, arms folded. Ricardo. My stomach churned. He was talking to someone. Another woman, from what I could tell, slender with short black hair. She seemed enthralled. He had that easy, confident manner, the same stance he'd had at the party. A wave of hatred boiled up in me. For an instant, I wanted to park the car, get out, and put my fist through his face. I wanted him to pay for the images in my head, for that single night that changed everything. But then, as I saw him lean in close to that other woman, I realized something. He didn't care. It was all a game to him, a conquest, a notch in his belt. Lauren had been just another trophy. I let the anger run through me, then simmer down. The truth was, punishing him wouldn't change what had happened. And punishing her only left me with a bitter emptiness. I drove away, tense, clenched. The city lights turned the streets into a blur of oranges and reds, the nightlife pulsing like a heartbeat I no longer recognized. The memory of her warm body against mine came rushing back, the way I once believed she belonged to me, that we belonged together. Now it was dust. Weeks turned into months. Life regained a semblance of normalcy. I'd go to work, do my job, receive polite greetings, nod, pretend. At home, The sign still hung by my door. Come in if you know how to be faithful. Sometimes people asked about it. I'd give a cryptic shrug, say it was just a personal motto. Inside, though, a war raged. The thirst for revenge, the triumph of shutting her out. It all felt stale. I was alone with my bitterness, and I realized that part of me had hoped she'd keep fighting for me, that she'd cling to me until I was somehow healed. But she had finally vanished, gone silent. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat accelerating. I swiped to read the text. "Thank you for setting me free." My stomach lurched. It had to be Lauren. No one else would phrase it like that. A short message, but loaded with meaning. I typed back, hands trembling with conflicting emotions. "Where are you?" The reply was immediate. "Gone." Then, a second message. "I won't bother you anymore. Don't worry." I felt my mouth go dry. She was stepping out of my life, truly. I pictured her, maybe in a half-empty apartment somewhere, packing up her last suitcase, about to head for some new city or some new attempt at life. And an ache spread through my chest, unlike anything else. All the illusions of strength, the protective walls, the sabotage and revenge. I'd orchestrated it so well. And now here I was, uncertain, trembling, feeling the weight of finality. "You're strong, right?" That question burned in me like a brand. At last, I typed a single word back. "Good." Then I dropped my phone on the couch, burying my face in my hands. No tears came, just an emptiness that felt deeper than any sorrow I'd ever known. I thought about calling her, asking for some closure. But closure was a myth. We both knew we'd crossed lines that couldn't be undone. The next morning, I woke with the image of that text in my head. "Thank you for setting me free." I dressed, skipping breakfast, and went to my front door. The wooden sign still hung there, the words etched in my clumsy hand. "Come in if you know how to be faithful." I reached out, touched the letters. In the early morning light, they looked more like scars than a message. The smell of cedar and dust filled my nostrils. I felt a wave of nausea. Perhaps the sign was more about my own inability to trust anyone again. Perhaps that was the real lesson. I'd caged myself in, not just her. I could hear the city waking up outside. The hum of cars, the beep of a distant garbage truck, the shuffle of morning joggers. Life went on. I realized, with dull acceptance, that I had to figure out where to go from here. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd humiliated her, forced her out of every social sphere she cared about, left her with nowhere to turn. And in the process, I'd locked myself in a cycle of bitterness that didn't let me breathe. But I was alive, wasn't I? I was strong, right? A scornful half-laugh escaped me. Maybe strength was more than just vengeance. Maybe it was also about letting go. But that was a truth I still wasn't ready to face. Instead, I stepped onto my porch, eyes on the empty street. My mind felt both savage and exhausted. Memories of her black dress at the party flickered in my vision. Then I saw my reflection in the window, looking ragged, older, more hollow than I ever remembered seeing myself. I murmured a single curse under my breath, stepping back inside. I left the sign where it was for now, unable to muster the will to remove it. Maybe tomorrow, I thought. Or maybe the day after. The door closed behind me with a solid click. I stood in that hush, feeling the weight of my choices, the final echo of my own cruelty. And in that silent moment, I realized that though I'd achieved exactly what I'd set out to do, I was the only one left to bear the consequences. Maybe that was the price of victory. Or maybe it was just the cost of hate. I felt the phone vibrate once more. Some random notification or spam, probably. But my heart jerked, half expecting another message from her. Nothing. I picked it up, scrolled through the feed. Blank. No calls. No texts. The empty line between us was final. In that quiet emptiness, I felt the swirling storm inside me try to settle. My fists unclenched, my shoulders sagged. Slowly, I sank onto my couch, letting the stillness surround me like a dense fog. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was an ending, and for the first time in a long time, I sensed the presence of a new question replacing the old. You're strong, right? Now the question was, strong enough for what comes next? I looked around my house, at the pictures on the wall. My parents, long gone, my few friends from college. Lauren's face was absent because I'd hidden all her photos in a box somewhere. Perhaps one day I'd throw them away or burn them. But not today. That was a step beyond me. I needed to breathe, to get up and walk, to keep living. The sweet reek of revenge was already starting to sour. I pushed myself up from the couch, walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. The cold liquid slid down my throat, soothing the dryness. My mind flickered back to that phone, to the final message I sent. Goodbye. Forever. She had set me free, too, in a way. Freed me from illusions. Freed me to ask myself whether vengeance was truly enough. I had no illusions that I'd simply wake up tomorrow a changed man. The stain of betrayal lingered deep. The fear of trusting again felt heavier than any object I'd ever lifted in the gym. But for now, at least I could stand, breathe, and think. I could look out the window and see that the world was still there, spinning, unbothered by my private storms. I braced myself against the countertop, closed my eyes, and pictured her one last time. That black dress swirling at the party, a half-smile dancing on her lips, the music pounding, the heat of bodies moving. Then my own reflection in the bathroom mirror upstairs, numb and in disbelief. A blink later, she was gone. She'd chosen someone else. Magic, she called it. And I had answered with a blade of ice. A shaky breath left me. My eyes opened, focusing on the faint morning light. Maybe I'd never quite get that image out of my head. Maybe I'd always compare myself to that man who stole her for a night. But if I was truly strong, I'd bear that scar. Because in the end, the real question, the only question, was whether I could live with myself after all I'd done. Whether the path forward had any chance of leading to something better than this bitterness. I turned off the kitchen light, walked to the front door, and gently rested a hand on the wooden sign. Come in if you know how to be faithful. I traced the letters with my fingertips. Then, slowly, I took it down from the hook. For a moment, I clutched it against my chest, feeling the grooves in the wood. It had served its purpose. I carried it to the side of the porch, setting it down near the recycling bin. A sigh escaped me, hoarse and drained. Then I turned back to the door. In the rising warmth of the morning, I stepped inside, and I let the door close with a soft, final click behind me.